Good evening,
Yeah.
TNT family. So we are back with you, and this program is called Yellow is the Code, and we are addressing any issues that may be of concern to you, or that we see happening in Trinidad. We saw uh, Mr. Young offering all this money to the divers in a hypocritical way. Yeah, so we've seen quite a few things. That all of a sudden Xiao Chang is acting like he was not in government all the time, and he's making all these promises that we see taking place. So I have with me here Mr. Arjun, and Arjun, what's your perspective on all these offers that Xiao Chang trying to offer the country, acting like he was not in government. He wasn't involved in suppressing the people alongside Dr. Rowley and Colin Booth and the rest of the team. What's your perspective on the offers that he's throwing out to the population at this point?
Well, Gary, and good evening to you and anybody else, everybody else who is locked into the live. Um, I think it's very interesting what is happening, and you have to put it really in context. Okay, now all of these things are linked together. For example, have you noticed that Dr. Rowley has been very scarce so far? I mean, it could change, but so far he has been very scarce on the campaign trail. And so that's one thing. The second thing is this campaign, the PNM's campaign, is being run as they're promising the population a new chapter. By saying what is to come is a new chapter, they're basically trying to distance themselves from what occurred over the last 10 years. Now, my understanding is the internal polls done by the PNM in recent times have shown that they are way behind the 8 ball, very low on the ratings. And therefore, they had to do something drastic in order to turn around their standing in the polls, in the eyes of the electorate. So one of the strategies is to sell what is going to come in the next 5 years as a new government, a new chapter, even though it's the same old players. And basically, you have a situation now where Stuart Young, the man at the helm, was really the Gary Sobers of the last administration. And that title was given to him by no lesser person than the Prime Minister himself. And we know that Stuart Young operated for the most part out of the office of the Prime Minister, and being the blue-eye boy of the Prime Minister, he was taken around to every meeting, everywhere, and he was allowed to be part of the decision-making in the PNM administration. So for him to come now and distance or try to distance himself from what occurred in the last 10 years is very hypocritical. He was part and parcel of everything that happened in the last administration, and not just as a passive bystander, but as a very active participant in all of it. So it is very hypocritical, and I cannot understand, why people not seeing through that, or maybe they are seeing through all of that and not buying that. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, so he comes now and makes this promise to the victims of that disaster, the Paria disaster, of $1 million each. But didn't he, as energy minister, the direct line minister, and that was his last portfolio, right? And we know that he was at the front line when this disaster happened. In fact, he was there on site giving press conferences and so on. So he was managing this process. And as the line minister in the ministry responsible for Paria and what happened there, his boss, I think just over a month or two ago, said that they are not going to make any payments to these families in a willy-nilly fashion. Do you remember that, Gary?
You know,
he is
the whole process, the whole incident was totally heartless. They totally ignored these people. They minimum amount of communication with them. Because I mean, I spoke to some of the families there, and we have our candidate for Laventer was joining us now. Yes, I'm going to add him to the thing here. So, Rod,
How are you?
welcome, welcome to Yellow is the Code. And, we just wanted to introduce you, officially to our listening audience because we really hadn't had a good chance to chat with you.
Yeah.
So, we were just discussing the level of hypocrisy that we see happening with Stuart Shaw making all these offers to the divers and the population and the promise of extra what is it, food cards and different things. People want jobs. People want
Well,
jobs. This,
you see,
the
they
level
are
of oppression
they are
against our
custom
people.
falling for these small little things and so they're feeling that still go work. But after 9 years of nothing, I don't think people will still take up these offers.
So how is your people feeling down there right now? Are they ready to
Well,
throw
we
this
having
government out?
a lot of disgruntledness on the Laventil part, where even the youths coming out and saying no because they're being jobless. The block is full with people, so they don't know what to do on the block again. You know, so they're actually coming out now and telling you they're fed up. They're
Well,
coming out and saying yellow
that's
is the
nice.
code. But as I just say, I waiting on the day because there is always say yellow is the code, and then when it's time, they sit on the block.
Right, and they don't come out
You
and vote.
understand? And they don't go and
Yeah.
vote. It's not people that say they don't have ID card, and that's nonsense. How they work in URP and all these things. They have their ID cards. You understand? But
Well, we want them
they
to
just sit down on
understand
the
what you
block and
try to do for them.
yeah. And they have a statement that it is one to make. I had to go to work tomorrow anyway. Anybody win, and they don't understand the consequences of that, because
So,
that have a serious consequence behind it. Because yes, anybody win tomorrow, but if they raise the taxi fares to $10 and they had to pay it still, if food prices go up and they still had to pay it, would their salary be enough? So we had to get rid of this way they like the ball, tomorrow I had to work again. I mean, you have to work, yes, but we living in a society that there are governors that govern the country, and it could cause your salary to look like nothing.
well, we have seen that happen with the country. We have seen the level of disrespect towards the people. We were seeing the statement. Well, them a riot. Yeah, the gas price raised this time and that time. Was it what 3 times or 4 times? And
Yeah.
they are riot yet. And I know I've seen enough issues in the Beatum there with the level of sewage water running down on the people. I mean, it
But you
happened
see
too
what
many
going on now
times.
because one of the candidates from the BTM, you find they're not highlighting none of those things anymore. So they're kind of
Right, right.
covering up now to say, well, all right, this ain't happening, that ain't happening. But all these things exist the same way. Nothing has changed in Laventil since then. Only now they pass it when they pass around roads that haven't been paved, that been begging to pave for donkey years. They're paving that in a day. You understand? So why you wait 9 years to do all these things? Because if you go back to my last election, was the same thing I said on nomination day the last time I go. We don't have representation in Laventil. That is 5 years ago. And we still end up with the same problem today. So by just changing a candidate, that gonna happen. We seen all these big boys behind him and think you feel if you win today or tomorrow, all these big boys staying standing behind him. That ain't going to happen anymore. Foster coming and all of them going and do their own thing and they not time with him. And then the set of promises he making. I hope God be with him. If he do end up the MP, I hope God be with him with these promises he making. Right? Because these promises to these people, it's going to be detrimental.
But after all what we have seen, Rod, right? After
Mm.
all that what we have seen with this government, Would people? I mean, could imagine people are still believing what they're selling? I mean, the level of disrespect to our people. I mean,
Well,
we have seen the situation with the divers. We have
I
seen. Go ahead.
I personally do believe the people buying into it, right? But I do, as I keep saying, I don't know what does happen on election day because I'm meeting yesterday. I come out this morning just to set up a little meeting space and I meeting PNM fanatics telling you the fed up. This morning that happening, PNM fanatics telling you, I fed up at this boy. It's nothing. It's really nothing. We ain't getting nothing. It's nothing. No work, no nothing, no nothing. But I don't know what is happening on election day. These people like they just go mad on election day and just do the opposite.
Well, we want them to understand what we're trying. We're trying our best with this program and the people on the ground to educate as much as possible what the agenda is, and we're trying to put a futures, put some structure on the ground so the people understand, what we're trying to do. So,
Yeah, yeah.
hopefully
Well,
that
the
I want
buying
to give
into
you
it,
some
you know. The
airtime.
buying, when I tell you the buying, we got manifestos last night. Well, manifestos because they broke down the manifestos into 9 parts. And they are workable things, very, very workable things. Even down to the health sector where they want to take away. And this is the hurtful thing with me and Lavanti. You have a prime minister telling you we're gonna take away CPEP and Jude and URP and that's basically what majority of Lavanti people lives on. So this is really hurtful for me when I hear the prime minister saying that, and I know the majority of my people is CPEP and all these things. If you go to have plenty of them on working on that.
It's I hear you, Rod, there. And the thing about it is that we want to give as much information so that the people clearly understand what we're trying to accomplish here. And it seems like a lot of people didn't understand the structure Mrs. V. Caesar had built between
No, they don't.
2010 uh, and um, and 2015, the level of things that she had put in place.
Yeah.
And they don't realize they had voted against themselves. I mean, the people that needed these things, the people that need these things the most voted against themselves, and they didn't seem to realize that. And this is what we're trying to cause some kind of understanding.
I
Uh, you
doubt they
know,
I doubt there were 5 more years of this. I doubting that. Them really want to take five. Let me draw an example for you, right? Where I live, they run a 2 inch main. Over 2 years and a half, they run that 2 inch main. Last week, over that 2.5 years, we have not been getting water. With all the pump and reservoir, we have not been getting water through those mains. Last week, about 2
seems like Rodney's a little bit frozen there. So, Rod, are you there? You seem to be frozen a little bit. Maybe it's your internet. Maybe it's your internet a little bit there.
Yeah, maybe he's a little. Maybe he need to
Yeah,
relocate closer to the
yeah, yeah.
modem or
Like
something.
maybe where Heavy is. Yeah, yeah.
It looks like
Uh,
he's in his car driving.
yeah, he's in the car. Yeah, he was out there. He dropped out. Yeah, so he was
Yeah,
out there
we lost
doing some
we lost him
some
there.
flyers and stuff like that. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah,
we lost
so
him.
yeah, so you can go ahead and talk while you try to get him back.
Yeah, but one of the things that if you look at the statistics, you will see that the voter turnout in that particular part of Trinidad is pretty low. So the PNM, of course, has a certain voter turnout, a voter a certain guaranteed amount of people will turn out to vote for the PNM, and they will, regardless, they will. I mean, you go back to 1986 when the NAR swept the country 33-3, and those two seats in that part of the country voted, solidly behind the PNM. I think the other seat was the San Fernando East, was the third seat. So people there have traditionally stuck with the PNM, but it is a low,
Yes.
very low voter turnout in that area.
Rod, you
So the
back? Are you hearing
challenge,
us? Yeah. And this other, it's a little bit dark there. Rodney, are you hearing us? Okay, go ahead, Arjun.
yeah, it seems like the challenge really for opposition parties and the UNC in particular is to excite those people who are in that, so if 33% of the voting population, 35%, whatever, turn out and vote for the PNM, you have to somehow find a way to excite the other 65%, to give them hope, and to me, the only way you could do that is to point directly to the policies of the UNC government and bring it home to these voters that listen. These policies that were directed to the poor and the downtrodden and people at that strata of society, those policies were directed at those people and they benefited. And you have to encourage them to understand that all of the policies, by keeping food prices down, taking away VAT from food items, and not introducing any new taxes, and so on and so on, and somehow get the message across to these people who find no reason to vote at all. You have to get that message out to them that, listen, the policies of the government benefited you directly. Single mothers baby grants and school books and uniform grants and laptops and all of these things that the UNC provided would have benefited you as an individual. In other words, you have to convince those people that voting has consequences, and not voting is as good as voting to leave the PNM in power. So yes, you could talk about all the frustrations that you have and how hard things are and all of that, all of those things. But if you don't get up, go and make a change, then you are voting to keep the status quo. You're voting to say, I like it so, let it continue for another 5 years. So how do you convince these people that, listen, you can make a difference? And you're talking about less than 10,000 people vote in these constituencies. How do you get 8,000-9,000 people in a constituency of 30,000 to come out and vote for you? And that's the big challenge. And I think one of the things that the UNC is probably guilty of is not having these systems in place in constituencies like these, where they can have databases, they can have groups set up in all the different sections of the community and have people engaged. But you see, it is difficult to do that when you're in opposition, because people want things during the course of the 5 years, and the opposition would be in no position to give gifts and URP jobs and whatever to these people. So
Yeah, and the
it's
government have
difficult.
all this money that they're spending, and that they don't
Yeah,
give account for too. I mean, we saw
ex-
50
ex- ex-
million
ex-
allocated to the prime
exactly.
minister
To spend
office.
however he wishes, right? So he could go and throw money into a street now and pave a road to make people happy and do whatever else they want without any issues, because they control the treasury. And we know money can be funneled and channeled into different ways without any accountability. $3.2 billion is unaccounted for as we speak. So that's the power of incumbency, and the PNM enjoys that at the moment. Incidentally, did you hear the Prime Minister question where is the UNC getting all this money to fund all these ads on television, radio, and the newspapers? Did you hear that question?
No, I didn't hear that one, but I hear the comments about where Kamala going to get all this money to do the thing that she promising. But I want to let them know that she found it the last time they
Well,
emptied the
well,
treasury, right?
yeah, and I hope the UNC responds appropriately to that stupid question, because and I'll deal with that just now. But going back to the question of where the UNC getting money to spend on all of these ad campaigns that they're doing. So my question is, where's the PNM getting their money to do? Because they're doing more than the UNC. So when you're in government, that gives you an advantage to spend money. I thought this is party money that has to be spent. I didn't realize that they have access to taxpayers' money to do that. So to ask where the UNC getting their money is to also answer, well, where's the PNM getting their money? Because the PNM certainly can't be taking it out of the treasury. So it's a stupid question to ask, where's the UNC getting their money from? But my answer to that is the same place the PNM getting theirs from. All right? So it just shows
PNM
that...
don't have the answer to nobody, right?
No, they don't. This is PNM country as far as they're concerned. They don't. We see what's happening with the national television station, TTT, and the national broadcast systems. They think it's theirs. They don't pay for anything on those stations. You see the UNC challenging those things in the system, asking them, and they got the information via the FIOA in terms of what kinds of monies have they paid for television, airtime on television and on radio and other channels. How much did they pay for those things? And those monies are still outstanding. They have not paid.
I saw something on that on the outstanding money.
Yeah, they haven't paid. So they're taking free airtime, basically, at taxpayers' expense. And that brings me to the other question that I started at the beginning to address, where the Prime Minister went up on a stage and said that he got the officials at the Ministry of Finance to run some numbers for him to show if the UNC got into power and they delivered on all the promises they are making, what is the impact that is going to have on the budget, on the debt of the country, and so on and so forth and so forth. But my question is, does the Ministry of Finance, does the technocrats at the Ministry of Finance, is it their jobs to provide that kind of information to the Prime Minister on the hustings? Listen, he's not a minister when he's on the hustings. He is the leader of the PNM. And technocrats at the Ministry of Finance have no business working for the leader of a political party. I wonder if Kamala asked the Ministry of Finance people to do the same exercise for her, whether they will do it. They won't, right? But why would they do it for Stuart Young? And I hope this administration would ask questions of Vishnu Danpal, the current Minister of Finance, when they get into power. Because maybe they don't understand that that is corruption. The man came out boldly on television, on national, speaking to the national community and saying that they have run the numbers. He asked the ministry to run the numbers. That is an admission of corruption.
We
The ministry don't
want the
work for you.
numbers. We want the numbers and the missing money where the Auditor General is calling them to explain. We want those
That is the numbers we want. That is the numbers we
Yeah.
want, because that is of national interest. Right? That is of national interest. We want to know, run those numbers and tell us where that 2.6 or 3.2 billion, whatever it is, we want to know. And incidentally, you saw the Minister of Finance got fired and transferred from that ministry. That says a lot. If he was doing such a fantastic job, why was he removed? But you see, again, he has questions to answer, which he cannot answer. So you hide him in another ministry. Now, you can't go and ask Vishnu Danpal those questions, right? He'll simply say, hey, I know nothing of it. I just came. Ask the Auditor General. Ask whoever. So that's the game they're playing in that regard. But he has those questions to answer.
Exactly. But all that trailer paperwork has to be, all that accounting has to still be there.
Yes. Yeah, that issue is not going to go away anytime soon, you know. Right? It's not going to go away. What was the other thing that you asked just now? And I said I will address it. Or the question of where's Kamala going to get the money from to finance all the promises that she is making. But the answer to that is simply...
I saw them making that statement. But I want to remind them that she did it before and she can do it again.
And the simple answer to that question is just look at the size of the current budget and compare it with the size of the budget in the 2010 to 2015 period. the PNM is spending the same amount or more than the UNC spent in 10 to 15. The size of the budget hasn't changed that much. So we are spending the same amount of money, and she got all of those things done. She paid the public servants 2 increases in 5 years. She paid them their back pay. The second back pay was outstanding when the government changed, but she paid the first tranche of that back pay. She paid 2 increases to public servants. They paid many increases across the public sector. Workers got their increases. I can't remember the number now, how many industrial agreements were signed off during that period. And she did all of that and did not introduce one single new tax. None. In fact, the PP government eliminated taxes. So they increased benefits to the general population in terms of increased salaries and benefits and so on, back pay and all of that. Did not increase any tax to get the money, and still managed to pay all her bills with the same amount of money that the PNM is currently spending in its budget. So where's the question? What is really the question you're asking? At the end of the day, it's a question of priorities. It is simply how you divide up the cake. The size of the cake hasn't changed. But when you put knife to the cake, is how you are going to divide it up between all the things that you have to spend on.
We're dealing with the situation here where the government take the bigger part of the cake, right? They're running away with the bigger part of the cake. Dr. Raleigh gave himself X amount of a pension to leave the office, and Seo Chong is going to get a large sum just like him also, you know, and they all give themselves a raise and telling the population to tighten their belt for the most of the time that they're in government, and refusing to give accountability for the spending. And we still have that outstanding $3 billion that they cannot account for and playing games with us, you know.
Yeah. And you see, the thing is, you're preaching one message right coming up towards when this payment was made, when the SRC recommendations were recommended, right? You remember the coal pot man, right? You remember the other minister, Marvin Gonzalez, talking about not eating macaroni pie and eliminating all of those things from your diet and so on and so on. Living, tightening your belt. So Marvin Gonzalez made the comment, sending a very strong message to the national population that, listen, you need to do it out. You need to sacrifice. Then we had the coal pot man and the bicycle. Incidentally, this man drives one of the highest grades Mercedes-Benz, SUV, and he lives close to Port of Spain, right? He ain't riding no bicycle.
We saw his bicycle. We saw his bicycle.
Yeah, he's not riding any bicycle, so don't get tied up with that, right? And I doubt whether he really has a coal pot in his house anyway. Anyway, so we got that from Marvin, we got that from the coal pot man, and we got that from Shamfa as well. Do you remember her statements when she made similar statements about our expectations are too high and we need to temper our expectations and so on and so on? The Prime Minister didn't waste time in telling us that we need to tighten our belts. And then within recent times, he came and said, listen, better times are coming middle of 2027. You remember that? So in other words, hold strain, tighten a little bit longer. 25 could be bad, 26 could be bad. And somewhere around the middle of 2027, when Dragon Gas comes to market, things will begin to improve. You remember all of that, right? Now, in the midst of all of that, they go and accept a 47% increase recommended, and the key word is recommended by the SRC. You did not have to accept it, The SRC does its work, they recommend, but if the Prime Minister does not accept it, it does not go any further. He gladly accepted it. So what message are you sending? You are sending up your salary by 47% and telling public servants and the public sector that they must continue to live on 2013 salaries. Take a 4%, take that. There's no negotiation. They're not going to a table in the typical bargaining process, sitting around a table and bargaining. No, we say 4% is all we could pay, take it or leave it. That is not industrial That is not a good industrial relations practice. But that's what the PNM did. And that matter now has, in the case of the PSA, has gone before the courts. So public servants continue to live on 2013 salaries. And when you see the former head of the PSA and the current head of the PSA jumping in the fray and jumping in the political guile, people on the other side are saying, but wait, the PSA is now a political party, and you hear all those kinds of comments. All right? But it is not a question of being a political party, it's a question of saying enough is enough.
Well, the
Enough is
PSA is
enough.
a representative of the people. All right. And I like how I love how Felicia Thomas put it to them. I would
Yeah.
like to get a hold of her. Go ahead.
Yeah. So those are the kinds of things that we have to deal with. All of this propaganda machinery that has gone into full first gear right now. We have to deal with it and debunk all of those lies that they're putting out there, right? And I just I try my best to debunk some of those things on Facebook, because they out there, those keyboard warriors are out there in full force. But that question of where is Kamala going to get the money and she's going to take us to the doors of the IMF and so on and so forth is a pack of rubbish. Right? As I said, it is simply a matter of management. How do you manage that budget so that you get the maximum benefit out of the same amount of money? Okay? It is simply how you divide it up. I can take a cake and cut 2 huge slices and the rest of it divvy it up into smaller pieces. Or I can take the same slice of cake and cut it up into equal parts where every sector is satisfied. And that is what people are not understanding. The PNM cuts up the cake in the way that they see fit. To benefit who? To benefit the rich. And they've never made it a secret. The Prime Minister himself said that the rich must get richer in order for the crumbs to fall off for the poor.
Yeah, but the Prime Minister lacks the understanding about when you're building a house, you have to build from the ground up. But go ahead.
Yeah, and that is where the problem is. You see, again, I say the size of the cake in Trinidad and Tobago, the budget is going to be a budget of over $55 billion. That ain't going to change anytime soon. It might reduce a little bit depending on how the energy sector go. All right. And some of that includes some borrowing as well, of course. But once you understand the size of the budget, and that is not going to change radically over the next couple of years, the question really is, how do you allocate those resources to meet the needs of the population? And where do you put the priority? The last PP administration put the priority on the poor and the vulnerable and set about to build an education system which was really, in my mind, not an expenditure, but an investment into the future. Had they been allowed for another 5 years, we would have begun to see the fruits of that investment. Expenditure in education is not an expense, it is an investment. And she was investing in the lives of young people from the very ground come up. And all of these tertiary level type institutions that they were building out, the DB campus, the nursing institution up in the east, and so on and so forth, all of these things that they were spending money in was really to position our young people for productive endeavors at the end of it. And had they been allowed to continue for another 5 years, you would have a cadre of qualified people ready to serve Trinidad and Tobago. What do we have now? They're grumbling about the nurses that we have to bring in from Cuba because the Americans are coming down very hard on them with all of these things, right? But why do we have to really rely on other people when we could produce our very own? Why it is
Well,
we have...
I understand we have over 200 doctors who are highly qualified. Can I get a job in Trinidad pumping gas or not different thing?
Well, 200 sound like a very conservative number. I know, I have a family friend who the guy waited 7 years after graduation to get a job in the public sector. 7 years. He was hopping around and doing little odd things here and there in the private sector. But 7 years before he got, and what is he getting now? 1 year contracts rolling over in the public system. 1 year contracts. Imagine your parents spend money to send you abroad to study medicine, and you have bills to pay. You have education loans to pay. And 7 years later, you can't get a job. And you
I have a doctor right now. I have a doctor right now who studied in Venezuela. The man is highly qualified in all kind of different surgery and treating cancer and different things. He applied to the ministry. He's been going around in circles. The man can't get a job. Somebody discovered him and sent him to me. See, I've seen if I can recommend, somebody that he can talk to. He's going back and forth from Venezuela. He's a trainee that went to Venezuela. He spent some years there, and he is highly qualified. I've seen all his qualification. There's something that we can definitely need in Trinidad. But go ahead.
And I heard the policies, the health sector policies of the UNC government, and they have quite a number of initiatives which will help to absorb those people into the public health system. For one, when you open the Couva Children's Hospital, immediately a whole bunch of people gets employed at all levels, doctors, nurses, technicians across the board. It not only provides services for the people of Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the medical services that is going to be provided, but it also provides employment for critical people in the health sector.
Is one thing we have to do is like I keep reiterating, right? Is that we have to heavily invest in our agriculture infrastructure to make sure our people eat. Number one, we have to deal with the flooding issues that destroying the people crops and their hard labor, and the situation where people can't get water and stuff like that. So those are the things that we would have to really invest heavily in. In the meantime, we will also have a team that's going to be working on revamping the oil and refining industry and all the different resources that we have with point leases and the different resources that we have to market outside the country. But we have to work strongly on investing in the agriculture industry. So definitely, I know Mrs. Bisesa is going to be taking care of our people.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you saw the recent statement by the Honorable Mia Motley, who is currently the chair of the Caribbean of CARICOM. But her response to the tariffs that the US has imposed on some Caribbean countries, I think it was yesterday or the day before, she issued a statement. And one of the things she was saying in there is that the focus has to shift very heavily into agriculture. And now we know Guyana is doing quite a bit, but that's just a drop in the bucket. And she was saying we have to start investing, first of all, in food security in the region. And she was making the point very clearly in very simple terms that anybody could understand. She was saying it's time we start going to the fresh greengrocer market instead of going to the grocery. Instead of buying processed food in the grocery, we have to start buying fresh, healthy stuff in the market.
Which will be beneficial to your health because we have
Yeah,
shifted into
exactly.
a direction that has caused people their health and they don't seem to understand that. And we already don't have a good healthcare system, even though Dr. Rowley can boast on that. We also have a massive block of the hospital that was built there with nothing to accommodate any sick people. There's a shell standing there and they run to open it to say they build something because of all the criticism that they have been gotten. But the UNC built 106 schools. They built hospital. They built teaching hospital. They had the economy going. They created 50,000 jobs. I mean, you were there. You are an economist. You can give us a little more insight, about that.
You see, one of the things, and I don't want to get technical. I mean, I'm an economist by training, but I don't want to get technical because, I know the audience that we speak to. But one of the things that the PNM government does not understand is this. And again, addressing the question of where the UNC is going to get the money. Listen, if you create 50,000 jobs in the country, immediately 50,000 people gets work. At the end of the week, end of the fortnight, end of the month, they get paid. But before they get paid, something comes out of that income called PAYE, tax, that goes to the government. So the more people that are employed in the country is the more tax revenue that the government gets immediately. Okay? The tax rate in Trinidad, the highest tax rate is 25%. For every dollar beyond the threshold that you earn, 25 cents goes to the government before you even touch it. It comes out at source. So what the PNM doesn't understand is simple basic economics. You put people to work, right? You get people working again, and government's revenue will increase at the same time. That's just one benefit of it. The other thing is, when a man gets his pay at the end of the week, end of Friday, or end of fortnight, or end of month, what does he do with the money? He goes to the shop to spend it, right? And there's something the economists call that ripple effect that will begin to happen. Once he spends that money, he creates employment for somebody else, because he goes to the barber shop, the barber gets employment, right? And the barber is now getting more and more jobs, because more and more people working, more and more people going for haircuts, more and more people running down to the pluck shop and buying meat on a weekend. The pluck shop gets work, right? They now have to hire an additional worker because the demand for chicken has increased. And that multiplier effect that economists call the multiplier effect goes into effect, and you create a series of employments down the road simply because one man got paid. One man got paid, and then he spends that money, and that money keeps spending and spending and spending, and you have this multiplier effect happening all the way down. He has to go to work, so he has to take a taxi to go to work, right? So he creates employment for the taxi driver. And then the taxi driver stops by the double man to buy double.
Yeah, but the silly thing about it, what we are seeing happening with this government have oppressed the man trying to sell the mango chow. You have oppressed the man
Yeah.
trying, the woman that trying to bake cake, or the man to sell. They don't have a source of income. They have not provided anything for them. They use the police to brutalize them and take away their goods. Not only stop them from or
Yep.
remove them, but took away their goods and caused
No,
damages and costs. You know.
I don't believe, and I wouldn't advocate for lawlessness. Right? I wouldn't do that. I don't encourage lawlessness. I wouldn't encourage it in any which way. But people do those kinds of things by like selling on the pavement and selling on the streets and so on, because there is no other option for them. Create the
But you
option.
could start there. You could start there. Many of our parents and grandparents started selling something. The guy selling on a bicycle, and the next thing he buy a truck, and the next thing he have a supermarket. So I mean, we believe in that kind of a system. It's just that we see, that we understand that there might be some issues with the people blocking the traffic, but provide
Provide
an
alternatives
area.
for them. Yes, provide
Yeah,
alternatives for them.
you just take a
Right?
piece of wood and beat them over the head, and that can
Okay,
be
look at it.
acceptable at all.
Look at the situation in Shogunas. That Shogunas market served the area surrounding Shogunas for many years, and served well. But the population of just the borough of Shogunas, and I heard this from a mayor, not the current mayor, the former mayor, has boomed over, blossomed over 100,000 people that market now has to serve. It's impossible.
That market has to move from there. It really has to.
Exactly. And you talk about all the chaos and confusion and traffic nightmares and so on in the borough of Shogunas, around Main Road Shogunas. First of all, is how much of that is created by the market being there? And the market has outlived its size and its usefulness. The time has come for you to find bigger space, better accommodation, right? As a result of the chaos that is happening there, people are now finding spaces across the entire main road of Shogunas, playing games with the police, running and dodging from the police and so on. Listen, these people don't get up in the morning and decide to be lawless. These people are people who are eking out a living when the day comes.
But they have to
They
hustle and
go up
make a
to
living.
they go up to
It's either you
Makoya.
want them to thief or do that.
Right, they go up to Makoya market and they buy the goods wholesale, and they come back down and they try to sell it and make a small, and they're living from day to day basically doing that. And they're not lawless by nature, they're trying to survive. And this government will send out the borough police and whoever else and so on to play games with them, run them and charge them and seize the goods and so on. Listen, if you seize the goods of one of those people, you know what damage you're doing to those people? They have to go home and feed hungry mouths. But this government does
But
not have
that's
any
total lack of. They
empathy.
don't care about that. They don't care
No,
about that.
no empathy at all for poor people. None, none, none. So instead of doing something about the situation as it exists, they do nothing and take the easy way out, which is to say, listen, you're breaking the law, and we're going to take the law and apply the law. That's not the approach. That's not the approach. But that has been the approach of the government.
Yeah, the
And
law
and,
was
and
made
I,
in the
I
benefit
heard,
of them.
yeah, I heard the opposition leader speaking about this the system they're using to tax drivers on the road, the penalties and so on. And clearly we see why and how that is being used as a revenue source for the government. Now, to me, it is immoral to ask people to drive on the worst roads possible. And if you go to Tobago, you will see bad roads as you see in Trinidad. I don't know where else in the Caribbean. And I'm not talking about side streets and countryside roads. I'm talking about main roads. I don't know which other Caribbean country. And I traveled, English speaking, French speaking, Dutch speaking. I traveled up and down this Caribbean. And I don't know where else in the Caribbean you're going to find a country where main roads are in the state that ours are in. Main roads.
And for
Imagine a man will
the kind of
fall.
money, the kind of money that came our way, revenue wise, we don't see value for money at all. We don't see value for money.
Yeah, but you are penalizing people for having defective vehicles, but the roads on which they're driving, it is impossible to have your car not in a defective state. Impossible. Right? I see men lose whole bumpers, a whole bumper fly out a car because a man drop in a hole. I see cars fall down in hole in Port of Spain. Port of Spain, the city's capital. A car gone down in a hole, the wheel gone down in a hole, and the car can't come out of the hole in Port of Spain. See it with my own eyes. No, this can't happen. You can't have things like this happening and then turn around and charge people for having defective vehicles. But that is what we have been experiencing for the last 10 years. And the demerit points, how many people have had these things? And again, I'm not encouraging lawlessness, but you have to also balance the thing out. You want people to have proper cars on the road, everything working up to mark, and so on and so forth, but provide decent roads for people to drive on. Where has the money
Yeah, they
come from?
put
The government said, we simply don't have the money to fix the roads. We went through 2020, we went through pandemic, we had to focus the money on keeping public servants working and blah, blah, blah. We know this story. Then about 2 years ago, the Prime Minister came and said, you're going to see a road improvement program like you have never seen before. Thank you for being patient and so on and so forth. We're going to pave roads all across the nation. And that's when Faris Alwari became the leader of the local government. And he said, from one end of the country to the other, you're going to see a road improvement program like you have never seen before. 2 years later, where is that? Where is that road improvement program that was promised 2 years ago? They created a company to deal specifically with secondary roads. You remember that? A separate company. Where is that company today? What are they doing? What is their budget? And which roads have they fixed? Suddenly, less than 3 weeks to go for an election, and they're paving roads all over the place. Paving roads in Lange Park that don't need paving. And the roads that need paving, they won't pave them. And you say it's not a political gimmick. And that is what we have had to endure. And I just hope that this country has come alive. Scales have come off people's eyes. And they can make a sound judgment on election day. Okay? And ask themselves, have my life been better? Have the quality of my life improved as a result of government policies? And if the answer to that is yes, you know how to vote. The answer to that is no, you know what you have to do. Simple, And I keep telling my friends, voting have consequences.
I mean, does the people really understand that? I mean, they have seen 10 years of this government. I mean, do we really understand this?
I went to buy, usually buy 2 doubles on a Saturday morning. I crossed the road from my house. There's a doubles vendor opposite my house. I crossed the road to buy my doubles, and I get into a conversation with the doubles vendor. And there's a lady standing there who joined in the conversation. And she said, you see me, no, the doubles lady asked her a question. She says, you see me and this politics thing, I don't want no part of that. So I jump on her case one time. I said, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by you and this politics thing? You want no part of this politics thing? So I wanted to get from her whether, of course, she's voting or not voting. Because that's where my interest lies. Yeah, I don't care if you don't watch the television programs and listen to the policies of the government and so forth and so forth. But ask yourself this question: is my life better off today than it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago? And if not, it is where it is because of government policy. And if you're not happy with the quality of your life because of government policy, then do something about it. It's very simple. And people talking about, UNC and PNM is the same thing, It can make a difference. And every time I hear that question, I said, well, what are you basing that on? It can't be on policies because, they are the opposite extreme when it comes to policies. The government, this current government mantra and philosophy is make the rich richer and no focus at all on the poor. Whereas the previous government had a more balanced approach. And if anything, a lot of emphasis was placed on the poor and the vulnerable. And you could see it in the policies that they implemented. Right? For one, no new tax introduced in 5 years, not a single tax, and reduced the ones that existed. They're coming back into an election and promising us several things which should be of interest to the population. One of the promises made on the campaign trail by the opposition leader is that public servants will no longer pay taxes on their retirement income. So if your retirement income as a public officer exceeds the threshold, you pay tax on the balance. And she promised public servants and public sector workers that their pension will now become tax-free. Immediately that frees up income in the hands of pensioners. And you have to remember that pensioners are the people at the most disadvantaged because they have no hope of their income ever increasing until they die. So if after your retirement you live 30 years, you retire at 60 and you live until 90, for the next 30 years, you are never going to get a salary increase, But every day prices are going up. So you're getting poorer and poorer and poorer every day. So when the prime minister, the opposition leader comes and makes a promise like that, listen, I will eliminate taxes on your pension. That immediately affects your purchasing power, your ability to buy more things, more groceries, more medicines, and we know what retired people spend their money on, right? And immediately more income becomes available to you. So when you tell me and this voting thing and this politics thing, I'm not interested in that. You're not understanding that voting has consequences. And if you don't vote, you are basically saying, I like the way things are. I am happy. I am happy that I have to close up my door at 6 o'clock and lock myself inside my house at 6 o'clock. And when Christmas time comes around, it gets dark by 5:30, 5:20, 5:30. You have to lock yourself in at 5:20. You can't go out.
So we got a break from that kind of tension when the PPG government under Kamala Prasad Bisisa won. We started to get a little relief on and some increase in security. We had police all over the place. I mean, there were so many things that was done. We started to see roads being fixed right away. Jack did so much work in Shoguanas right there with the flyover and everything, rerouting. Creating a rerouting procedure there with the highway, a diversion of with the highway right there in Shoguanas, alternate route, to reroute the traffic and things like that. So I saw they kind of closed that up, and by Medford there.
This new administration they have tinkered a little bit with the traffic arrangements in Shoguanas, but by and large, what Mr. Warner put in place when he was the MP for Shoguanas and the Works Minister, when he was Works Minister, the things that he put in place by and large have remained. small minor changes and adjustments here and there, but basically he transformed traffic in and around Shogunas, and make no bones about it, it is still very bad. It still needs work, right? But
I
who
mean, we have
cares?
seen they didn't clean the rivers, much less to expand it. They didn't maintain cleaning the rivers and the large drains and stuff. So that's why you have so much flooding, and we're dealing with global warming conditions. We have a mass amount of rain more than usual. You could get a month of rain in 2 days,
Yep.
and they don't seem to understand that. First of all, being the fact that they needed to expand their holding capacity, we did not even maintain and clean, and then want to come and talk.
Yeah, well, that's Mr. Rohan Sinanan, who, I don't understand what his priorities really are. I don't. And we are
Well,
now on the
money
verge.
spent, we don't see no value.
Yeah, but we are the verge of another rainy season. And now this dry season that we are in now is when they should have been using the opportunity to clean all those drains and rivers. Now, right here in Shogunas in Central Trinidad, on both sides of the highways, there are drains, massive drains on both sides, which need to be cleaned. And now is when you should be doing it, not when the first flood happens and you come with a, um, kind of piecemeal approach to dealing with the problem. Do it now before the rain comes. And they're not doing it. So it is all a question of priorities and what they see as important, right? Suddenly finding money to pave roads in and around Shogunas East, because Shogunas East is a marginal constituency, and then they will come around and tell you it is not electioneering, right? He gave $1 million to the families of the Paria victims and say this is nothing to do with electioneering. And road paving in Central Trinidad right now in the constituency of Shogunas East has nothing to do with electioneering. But all the time we had no money to even patch the roads. We couldn't even patch the roads. Now we are paving them. So where has the money become available from? Suddenly, from where? And people fall for these things, They get this little handout, they get this little, well, I get my road fix and wherever, right? And people fall for these things, and because we as Trinis have, as they say, we have a 9-day memory. And you will not see another paving exercise for the next 5 years once the elections are over. It's gone.
Somebody sent me some pictures where they started painting a wall in Grandy with moss on it, and don't even scrub the wall. But they're rushing
Yeah,
to protect the place.
yeah. Right
And
here in
hampers, I hear
Shogunas.
hampers giving out like crazy.
Yeah. They'll find ways and means to buy votes right here in Shogunas on that main road, in the back there by Das Funeral Home. A few years ago, there was a trailer truck parked on that road. The trailer parked on the road, and the machine came to pave the road, and they paved right around the trailer and left. And when the owner eventually moved the trailer, there was this spot on the road without any asphalt. They just went right around the truck and went their way.
Pave around the truck and let's go and leave the truck right there.
Yeah. That's the kind of craziness we see. That's the kind of madness we see happening. But it's all, there's a deadline. April 28th is a deadline. You have to get it done, regardless.
Well, I hope that people listen to what we're saying and they make an effort to get up and go there and vote. To make an effort to make sure that the people in your household get up and go there and vote. I mean, people. A lot of people are talking. You see, a lot of the young people talking about, oh, I get out of here and I get out of there. And over here, things have gotten so tough here in the United States that Donald Trump trying to get rid of legal citizens. He's looking for an angle. So it's not
Yeah.
easy to just come here and sneak in and make a little 6 months and go back home and try to better yourself. That's done. It's over with.
Yeah.
All right. Same thing with
Canada,
Canada, and then the
Canada,
UK
Canada,
getting tough with us too.
Canada wants people. They want people to come there. But when you go up there and you realize how difficult it is to live there, to pay your bills and to live in basements. And I saw this lady put out a video recently about basement living in Canada. And basically you're living down in the earth in somebody's basement. And it's survival, just working to pay your rent and survive. right? And she was saying, listen, Trinidadians who are thinking about it, please understand what you're coming to. It's not a bed of roses outside here. So
Exactly. I
those who
mean,
feel that
and
they
it's
can pack
tough.
up tomorrow and run out to the United States or to Canada or to wherever, right? Europe is becoming one of the most expensive places in the world to live. And if you feel you're going to run out of here and run to those places, visas are coming back. As we know, you now have to get a visa to go to the UK, and that
Right.
will soon be followed by Schengen visa to the European Union, right?
You know,
So
so
you're not going
we
to
are,
be able to travel freely to these countries anyway.
we have to stand up and fight for what we have. We have to secure the Caribbean. We have to work with our Caribbean neighbors to
Yeah.
strengthen the Caribbean,
But even if you
and
could
the
get up
quicker
as
we
a
learn
young
this.
person, right? But even if as a young person you could get up and go because you're qualified, you're young, some country will gladly accept you because you can make a contribution to develop their economies. But what about your siblings that you leave back here? What about your parents, your grandparents? You just don't care. You're going to leave those people here to suffer. You're going to make a better
And
life
you,
for yourself. But what about the others?
but you could find yourself in a place where there's a lot of discrimination against you. You know, it depends on where you go. You know,
Exactly.
it's not easy. You know, I mean,
I
so
don't think any reasonable person can say that migration to the first world at this time is a serious consideration. So I don't care what happens in Trinidad because I am going to leave anyway. To me, that's a selfish way to see things, and you really don't care about the country of your birth because even if you go, you still have ties to Trinidad, and you should still be interested in what is happening here. And if you can stay and fix it, fix it, fix it. That would be my advice. And Gary, if our listeners are hearing anything tonight, I want people to hear this, that at the end of the day, voting has consequences. And let your conscience guide you. Ask
but
yourself some
we
very
have to think
serious questions.
seriously about it. With this, if it there ever a time we had to think more seriously about it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Voting has consequences. And it is not something that we should take lightly. And our forefathers fought for this right. And people will get up on election day and say, me feel like what I benefit from tomorrow. I still have to get up and go to work. The government don't give me nothing. I still have to go up there and face the grocery the next day, and I still have to go to work and work hard. And where all of that is true. But when you work hard, you can't come home and enjoy your own house. You can't enjoy your own property. So what's the point? The government don't give you nothing is true. But what's about it? What about the quality of your life? You're not safe in your own country. You're not safe in your own house. I stood up here 2 o'clock on the dot a couple months ago in my house, 2 o'clock in the morning, and gunshots ringing outside my house. I thought it was in my yard. The gunshots were so close. It was across the road from my neighbor. 5 men attempted to bulldoze their way into the man's house. 5 bandits. 2 o'clock in the morning, exactly 2 a.m. Thank God he had a licensed firearm and he was able to fend them off.
Just imagine that, and that's the
So
place
yes,
we could have.
you have to get up and go to work tomorrow. The government ain't going to give you a handout or give you nothing. I understand that. I agree with you fully. But how is their action or inaction going to affect the quality of your life? You have to drive on the roads. You have to drive your car, your hard-earned money spent to buy a vehicle. You have to drive it on the nation's roads. And instead of you getting a proper road to drive on, they don't care about maintaining the roads.
What's the cost of a new car down there now? It's about $300,000-$400,000, right?
No, you could get a small vehicle, a 1.3, 1.5 engine for around 200,000. Small vehicle,
Brand new, brand new.
around 200,000.
Okay.
Yeah, go up, of course,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it bothers me when people and you could say what you want. This election, the voter turnout is going to be roughly 60%, right? 3 out of every 5 person will see the need to vote. The other two will simply not vote. They just don't care. And those are the people that we have to make a serious effort to reach out to. Those are the people you have to convince that your vote matters. You can't sit down on your right to vote and do nothing and then complain after. And some of those are the most vocal people when it comes to complaining. They're the most vocal, but they do nothing on election day. And if they go to the voting booth and they see a line of 20 or 30 people in front of them, they say, I don't have time for that. And they leave and go home. Right? They want to vote in air condition. They don't want to stand up. And if a little shower rain come down, instead of pulling out an umbrella and standing on an umbrella in the line, they leave and go home and say, listen, it ain't worth it. I'm not going through that. Every little frustration on election day, people will turn away and go home. Go sit down in the comfort of their living room and watch TV for the rest of the day. They get the day off, right? They get the time off. We cannot continue to be a people like that. We can't continue to live that way and then complain about the quality of our lives. And the police are doing nothing, and the government are doing nothing, and nobody doing nothing. Yeah, well, you get a chance
Well,
once every 5
you
years.
hire government to do nothing. You hire government to do nothing. That's what you hire.
Like,
So you have an
exactly,
opportunity to change it now.
exactly. You see, people don't understand that they are the bosses and the government is the servants. They don't understand that. Right? And if your servant isn't doing what you hired them to do, you get rid of them and hire somebody else. It's as simple as that. But we
I don't
allow
understand the
politicians,
tolerance.
we allow these politicians to then become our masters when in fact they should be our servants. But we don't understand that. And we must, every opportunity, we must make them to understand that you are put there to serve my interests. That's why I voted for. But we don't see it like that. And we treat them as little demigods and so on, and then allow them to walk all over us and take us for granted and do nothing for us. So people really need to, the society at large, we need to educate our people. We need to talk to them. We need to continue to preach this gospel, across the board, getting people to understand their rights, the privilege they have to vote, to change what they don't like, and so on and so forth. And until, people could get to that, nothing is going to change.
We have a justice system that has to be overhauled. We have a police force that has to be overhauled. I mean, there isn't. We have a healthcare system that needs to be drastically overhauled. We have an education system with the same thing. I mean, we have a coast guard that is disabled at this point, where the borders are wide open. Anybody can walk in, and we don't feel we need to act on something like that. I mean, I fail to understand that. At what point do we get up and realize that
Right,
this is in our best interest?
right. And the thing is, we Trinidadians, whether we like it or not, we are a selfish people, right? And we continue to think about ourselves and ourselves only. And the only time it becomes a problem is when the crime reaches to your doorstep. And you hear people say it all the time, I never expected this to reach to my door. But when it reaches your doorstep, then
How
you begin to
how
realize,
how you didn't expect that?
yeah,
You fail to work together. You fail to come together as a community and chastise and challenge those that are trying to invade your community and do what they want.
yeah,
Because none of us can stand alone. You just said 4 or 5 guys came at a
yeah,
man, to his house. They don't come alone. The criminals don't come alone. It's
yeah,
quite a number of them. So we have
yeah,
to come together, to work together to put an end to the situation. Even when
yeah,
Mrs. Visesa becomes the next prime minister, we have to put some of these structures in place. We have to get the TTPS to work and train the community and to work together with the community so that we can fight and counterattack these problems. We have to
yeah,
apply as much deterrence, as much prevention as possible. Because I have a
yeah,
saying, justice don't resurrect the dead. So I don't care how much justice out there. You're
yeah,
dead, you're dead. You can't, that
yeah,
doesn't bring back the dead. Only Jesus Christ can bring back the dead.
yeah. And that's the whole problem with the justice system. I mean, people will continue to commit crime once they believe that they're not going to get caught. Right? Once the
Second, easy
criminal
get away.
knows that he is not going to get caught, and even if he gets caught, he'll be out the next day on bail. Once he has that in the back of his mind, then nothing prevents him from committing crimes. Nothing. Right? Nothing's
We saw
prevented.
Senior Superintendent Alexander talking about the police having the resources. The police, like he said, even when they want to come, they have no vehicle to come. They don't have the
Yeah.
resources to,
I
it's such a
recently,
danger.
yeah, recently I had cause to call the police, and they took the report, they took the call, and said that a vehicle will come in my direction in a little while. That they were attending to another robbery somewhere in the Edinburgh 500 area, whatever. And once they are finished with that task, they'll come across by me. So I waited and I waited and I waited, and the police never arrived. So I called back the station and I asked to speak with the corporal, and she was very polite, and she said to me, and this is the Shogunas police station, a major station in central Trinidad, and she politely said to me that the guys were attending to this robbery when I called in the Edinburgh 500 area, and on their way over by me, they got another call for another robbery in progress, and they diverted from coming to me to go somewhere else. So I asked, is there only one vehicle working at the Shogona station? And she said, unfortunately, yes. At that
Just imagine
moment,
that.
at that
Just
moment,
imagine
there
that.
was one vehicle in working condition at the Shogunas police station. I ain't telling you about a story, I tell you about what happened to me. Okay. And then, of course, I escalated the call to Port of Spain at a higher level, because of connections that we have. And the same thing happened. I mean, the senior officers in Port of Spain called the Shogunas police station to inquire what happened, and that's exactly what happened. They just rerouted us, the police, to a crime in progress. My situation was not urgent. So the police has to make that kind of decision. How do they split themselves up? What do they attend to? And then when they finally take the report, if your matter in their eyes and their judgment isn't as critical as another one because they have limited time and limited resources, they will prioritize what they investigate and what they don't.
And it's unfortunate that they really don't have the choice.
No, they don't.
They
They
really
don't. They're
they don't
short
have
on
the choice
manpower.
because yeah, and
They're short on
the
manpower.
issue is real. I mean, you have bullets flying, people getting shot. These people are shooting at police,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I mean, there's a lot of improvement that we have to do under a new UNC government, and we have the right caliber of people there, and we will bring in more, to assist those that are there. So there's no stopping with the objective to improve our security, and so the people must understand what they're voting for. They must understand
yeah.
what they're voting for.
And I think the opposition and its partners in this election understand what the two crisis needs are at the moment. Security is top of the line. There's no issue there. The biggest problem facing Trinidad and Tobago is national security. And an admission by the government that national security is an issue, of course, is in the recent firing of the Minister of National Security. And
Which
incidentally, the
they created.
second,
They created it.
yeah, and calls for his resignation and firing for the longest while went unheeded. I don't know what he had over the last prime minister so that he was never fired from his job. It took a change in prime minister to immediately result in his firing. But incidentally, that is the biggest problem, and therefore that has to be fixed. The second biggest problem, of course, is the economy. And again,
Yeah. But before you go to the economy, this prime minister was Minister of National Security, and he was
yes,
overseeing the current Minister of National Security, even though some don't want to admit that.
yes,
He was dictating the terms. So he was still running national security from his
yes,
angle. I don't care what
yes,
nobody say. He was still
yes.
calling the shots. I want to come talk to us now. But go ahead.
But did you hear him last night? I think it was talking about his crime fighting measures, as if he just dropped from space. You were a national security minister under whose watch crime escalated to unprecedented levels.
And
Under
he had
your
all
watch.
access to all authority under Dr. Rowley. He had the privilege.
Yes, yes.
Nobody had privilege like Cho Tiong. Cho Tiong called the
And
shot.
and crime escalated to unprecedented levels under your watch, to the point where you were removed as the Minister of National Security. And now you come in to tell me 2 years later, oh, you have all of these plans for crime fighting. Why didn't you implement them when crime was running away under your watch?
Yeah, who
Where were you and
prevented
what
you?
were you doing?
Dr. Rowley gave you full authority. You the
Yes, what?
man.
Why didn't you solve it back then? You didn't know that you're prime minister because you see they want to tell us that it's a new chapter and a new beginning and a new this and a new that. Hey, you were the minister in charge and you flopped and
Welcome,
you
Candice.
failed. When you
I
had
mean,
direct responsibility for national security, you did nothing to address the issue. Nothing. You failed. We hit new highs under your watch. So don't come now to tell me that you have all of these crime fighting strategies in place. None. Don't tell me. I'm not interested. You've been there, done
we
that. You
have about
failed.
12 boats. We have about 12 Coast Guard vessels right now that is down.
Yeah.
About 12 of
Packed
them,
up.
right?
We have some of
Yeah.
them we bought that was never used. Bought and packed up. Never used. But you are coming to tell me you removed 150 um, guns off the street under the SOE. That's fine. That's fine if you remove 150. But tell me about the 500 that came in while you remove 150 off the street. What about the 500 that just came in? Because you have no idea how many came in. Because the borders are open and porous.
You
So
don't need
you're
nothing fancy
removing.
to come across. Any little pirogue coming across there.
It's like you have a water tank that you're filling up, right? And the leak at the bottom of the tank is bigger than the hose that is coming in at the top to fill it. What is going to happen? More water is flowing out of the tank than water coming into the tank. Is the tank ever going to be filled? So you remove 150 guns off the street under the SOE, but 500 came in. The net difference is 350, right? So you're wasting everybody's time. And you make a big boast about how many guns you have taken off the streets. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in how many came in to the country during the SOE. That is what I'm interested in. But you can't share that information with us because you don't even know. So taking guns off the street and making a big pappy show about the few that you've taken off the street really doesn't help anybody. Not going to help anybody. Deal with the main problem first. And the main problem is our porous borders. Deal with that. And when you stop that, when you stop the leak at the bottom of the tank, no matter what is coming in at the top, the tank is going to fill. But you have to clog that hole at the bottom. Do like Wassa and get a piece of cedar and chuck it in the hole. That's how Wassa fixes lines now, with a piece of wood. Plug the hole. Close up the borders. Get our Coast Guards out there on the waters. You know, somebody said recently the Coast Guard sits where they sit, see boats passing up and down in the waters and can't do anything because there's no way to go out and catch these guys. So they see the boats passing and they can't do anything. That is a sad, sad, sad situation. We're an island, a small island of 1964 square miles, and we can't protect our own borders.
With the level of revenue that came our way, right? But we see politicians getting rich, right? And we don't see the resources going in the direction of people.
Yeah, yeah,
And they hate Mrs. Bisesa for unleashing the treasury on the people, for giving the resources to the people. She's hated for that, and they make up all kind of reason to create animosity against her. In the meantime, if you look at what she did, I mean, they had a song back in the day, the 70s, action is louder than words, right? But Mrs.
yep,
Bisesa actions are louder than the words of the PNM, because she has a track record. She has a track record of performance and delivery.
yep, yep. But it is very sad. It is very sad where things are at, and one can only hope that the population of Trinidad and Tobago politically matured enough to understand that all of this race talk and all of this, propaganda that is being fed to us and so on and so on, at the end of the day, none of that makes any sense. None of that is going to help us tomorrow morning or on the morning of the 29th of April, all right, if we do not make a wise decision on the 28th. Nothing is going to change. And we are going to continue like we have been going for the last 10 years. And where is this country going to finally end up? Because people talk about the legacy of the former prime minister. What is going to be his legacy? What will he be remembered by? And I sat and I pondered on that question. What is Dr. Rowley going to be remembered by? All right, we can think
Do
of
we want
former
to really
prime
remember
minister.
him?
No, but he will be remembered. He will be
Yeah,
remembered.
yeah,
The
for the
question is,
things that he did.
what will he be remembered by? And I think one of the most famous statements that sums up his tenure is, the rich must get richer. The rich must get
And we
richer.
need stuff of the government. We need stuff of the
Yes,
government.
I think that is what his legacy is going to be by. And listen, he summed up his political career, I think, in his final speech. And I think that was his final speech when
Why
he
he run
came back
away?
from
He run away from the
when
fight?
yeah, when he came back, you know what he said? If dragon gas does not happen as a country, our cuckoo cook. He made that statement on his return to Trinidad in his final speech to this country, in his final address to this country. He used those words.
That's because the
Without
PNM did not
dragon,
invest in anything
without
other than the gas, in oil and gas, right?
right, without dragon gas, your cuckoo cook. Now, what are the chances of dragon gas happening in the current um
Under the
in the
current nature of
in
things under the new administration, new U.S.
yeah
administration.
in the global
And he
political
crippled,
scenario.
he destroyed Petrotrin. He destroyed Petrotrin where we could have been marketing to other countries because we had relations and trade with other countries where
No,
we
but
sell our products.
our refined products went up and down the entire Caribbean. We supply the
Yeah,
entire Caribbean because they need small quantities. They found it, suitable to buy from us because we can do what they call milk runs. So you go up the
right,
islands and you drop a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, what we call milk runs. And it was
right.
convenient for them to buy from us because they're buying in small quantities.
Right.
Now, now Trinidad and Tobago is buying refined products from a country that has no oil.
We buy it from Jamaica.
Let,
Just
let,
imagine
let,
we
let,
buy it from
let,
Jamaica.
let that sink in now. Trinidadians, let that sink in. We are buying refined petroleum products from a country that produces no oil. How does that make sense? Make that make sense. We are an oil producing country, but we are buying products from a country that has no oil. They are buying it on the open market, refining it and selling it to us. Make that make sense. But that is PNM economic philosophy. That is their policy. And the prime minister, was it the prime minister or the minister of energy, actually went out and defended that, by basically telling us that we must be good neighbors in the Caribbean. We must support each other in the Caribbean. Buying
Oh,
oil from
I strongly supporting the Caribbean, but not supporting a product that we had that we were supplying. Not in the way that they're talking about it. But I sure they want to switch things around here to their own fancy. I want to welcome David Bostock from Lavantil. David, we want to encourage you to support our candidate there for Lavantil West, Rodney Still. We have Rodney has a lot of good intentions for Lavantil out there, and we are trying to support him and give him all the help. So all our listening audience who may be from Lavantil area, we want to encourage you to support Rodney Stowe there because the new UNC government under Mrs. Visesa is going to create a lot of opportunity for your people up in Lavantil. So I want to encourage you all to support Rodney Stowe out in Lavantil West. Go ahead, Arjun.
Yeah. Um. So I was saying, when you look at the philosophy of the current administration, you have to question really where their priorities are, and they try to sell us the real reason why Petrotrin was closed, and well, they don't consider it closed, they consider it what restructured, whatever. The point is the refinery was closed. Whether you want to call it Petrotrin or whatever name you want to call it by, the refinery was closed. That is an undisputed fact. All right. So let's not get into the semantics of whether Petrotrin was closed or not. The refinery was shut down. And the question is, should the refinery have been shut down? And if it was not good enough to continue operating back then, why do you now want to sell it to somebody else? Why are you trying to sell it if it was not good? And now they're trying to get a buyer for it. And what, 7, 8 years have passed? I don't know if that thing could really be resurrected. I'm no expert in that field, and I don't know. But people who know better than me have told me that the longer that thing stays mothballed, it is more difficult it is going to be to get it resurrected. And what, 8 years have passed? Right? What is the shelf life of that refinery having been mothballed? What is the shelf life? I don't know. I do have no answers to that.
It's doable, but we will have to look at it. According to former Minister of Energy, even the technology, has long upgraded. So we will have to upgrade the technology there. It's just like a car. You don't use it for a couple of years, everything seized up. And things start to get rusted. So you would need new equipment, new parts. There's a lot of infrastructure work there, but we have, like I said, we have several avenues of resources that we all have to work hard on. But definitely we have to make sure we have the agricultural industry by dealing with the flooding issues and the infrastructural issues and trying to boost that so that people can eat in the meantime. We try to sort out all the other issues. That's the way
Well,
I see it.
one thing for sure, we know the coalition of interest will attract the correct skill sets, people who are in the know and people who have the required skills to get things moving again. That's one thing. And two, you have a leadership with the political will to get things done. And there's a famous saying that everything rises and falls with leadership. And once you have the proper management in place, no matter what your constraints are, and this goes even at the company level, and I had the privilege of managing companies, and I could tell you that once there's the will and you have a management structure in place that has defined goals and objectives in front of you, and you have the will to get it done, no matter what constraints you have, you're going to find ways around it. As a manager, when I was a manager, my subordinates would come to me with a problem. I would give them a listening ear. I would listen to everything they had to say to me. And at the end of the conversation, I would say to them, I heard what you said. Now I want the other half of the conversation, which is, so what are you going to do? We know what the problem is. Now, what are we going to do to solve it? Because you are not going to walk out of my office and leave me to figure it out. No, we are going to sit together and we are going to find a solution. And we are not leaving here until we find a solution. What are these
Exactly.
solutions? And we can rest assured that we have an incoming administration which has the political will to get it done and will find a way to get it done. And thankfully, you can see from what is happening now, they are already attracting people with the correct skill sets. Now, these people are being hammered, of course, by the opposition, by the other side, and they are pulling up all kinds of rake and all kinds of scraps on people and whatever. But I don't think it's working. I don't think it is. I mean, they're going after former.
We have a massive team of intellectual people. That I'm very impressed to see the people that's coming on board with Mrs. Visesa. And they are fully energized. And so I think we're going to be able to hit the ground running because they can't wait to get the job done.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the whole thing about it. I mean, I'm seeing a little bit of 1986 revived, where people were so enthused about change, the change that was needed, and willing to put country first and willing to make sacrifices to build a better country. Right? 1986 was the first time I voted. I remember it, as if it was yesterday. And as a young voter, I was so excited about what was happening in Trinidad. Right? And I'm seeing a little bit of that coming back. And I mean, we still have a 3 weeks to go. And I think it will happen that, as we get closer to election day, people will get more and more excited about the future of Trinidad and Tobago, and people will come on board and pledge themselves to work to build a better country. I mean, one can live in hope, and let's hope that that comes to fruition, and we move to a better place, um, going forward for the rest of this year and the next 5 years. Because honestly, I don't know what the alternative is. I don't.
The momentum is building, and the people are fully, I think, fully engaged in it.
I mean, if the philosophy of, as I said, we talk about the legacy of Dr. Rowley and the rich must get richer, and his policies were so designed. Could you imagine what Stuart Young is going to do? You had a man from Mason Hall who supposedly came through from the ground up, and whose mantra was the rich must get richer. And here you have a blue-eyed boy from Port of Spain who probably never went to the supermarket in his life until this week, now becomes the prime minister. What is going to be his philosophy in terms of managing this country? What? He can't even
Well, I
connect
think he, I
with,
think he was managing. I think Dr. Rowley gave him full privilege, as far as we see. He was managing. Dr. Rowley was
right?
just there on his side, but he was the one managing because everything that was done was Chot Young, minister of everything. You
Yeah.
know,
And don't be naive about what happens in Trinidad politics. It's really the financiers that call the shot, right? The recent changes you saw at the upper echelons and the PNM didn't happen just so. The membership of the PNM didn't make those decisions. Those decisions are made by the financiers of the party, and is a sad reality, or is a reality of Trinidad and Tobago politics. So when they call the shot, and if rich people are calling the shots, then the rich will get richer because they are calling the shots.
I mean, look what has happened. The banks has had made a great killing in revenue, right? In the meantime, there's no ease of doing business for the normal citizen. There
Yeah,
is this total inconsideration. Everything is a hassle with the bank.
yeah. Well, as a former central banker myself, I mean, I would be the last person to be critical of the banking sector, because really the banking system operates on confidence, and you really want to see the commercial banks operate and be profitable. That's the last thing. You don't want to see banks profits falling, and so on and so forth. Um, so I would be the last to call for anything in that regard. But at the
But
same
what I'm talking
time,
about is the complication of doing business. There's a lack
yeah,
of
yeah,
concern for the common man.
exactly, and that's where I was going. I remember when Ewart Williams was governor of the central bank, he had a meeting and he made a public statement about it. That bank fees in Trinidad had become so onerous, and he had made a public appeal to the banks to pay serious mind to what they were doing in terms of bank fees and so on. But the banks paid no heed. They never took him on, and they continue to do that. And even today, I mean, they make it so difficult for people to do simple banking transactions, right? And yes, as I said, I want to see the banks remain profitable, and I want to see them doing well. That's the last sector that you want to see get into any kind of trouble, because one bank go belly up, and your system could collapse. So that given, you want the banks to still remain competitive and stop behaving, as many have accused them of behaving, like an oligarchy, where as soon as one raises rates in one regard, they all follow suit. And they're not competitive. They don't compete one against the other. rather they act in unison. So once you see that happening, you know you're going to be stitched. You can't run from bank to bank to get a better deal. They all operate the same way. So I think that's one area that they have to deal with. But suddenly the prime minister has found a solution to the foreign exchange crisis. You know, he went on stage a couple of nights ago, about almost a week ago, and said, as prime minister, I cannot understand why the poor man could go to the bank and can't get foreign exchange. Did you hear that statement? And my first reaction was, this man just dropped from Mars.
It's amazing. But go ahead, I'm listening to you.
No, I mean, when I heard that statement, my eyebrows raised, my hair, I could not believe that I heard the man say that. He cannot understand how a poor man, the small man, yeah, that was his word, the small man, how this small man could go to a bank and not be able to get more than $100 or $200 in foreign currency. And I said, but wait, Stuart, where have you been? Because you don't go and line up in the bank to get foreign exchange. So you don't understand that. But that's a sad reality in Trinidad and Tobago. He cannot understand that. And he made a pappy show, called the central bank and some of the bankers and called a meeting of several people. To do what? To do what? That is not the problem, Mr. Prime Minister. The problem is the supply. The problem is on the supply side. Fix the supply side. And you as managing minister should know that you have done nothing to fix the supply side. And then want to come out here and tell us that once the UNC win, the exchange rate is going to 15 to 1. 15 to 1. Ask yourself, where has the black market gone under the PNM in the last 5 years? What is the rate in the black market now? People are paying as much as $10 right now. As much as $10 to get the foreign exchange. But you see in the bank selling at 680, but that is not the real rate. The real rate is what are people prepared to pay for to get the foreign exchange that they desperately need.
That is a conversation I want to bring you back with Mr. Ved Sriram. I said I was doing that. So this week I want to try and do that. So I'll check with you to see availability. I want to bring him back on so for that discussion with that. So what he was saying.
You see, the black market price is really the indicator of the value of the currency. And when people say, and he say, you know, all these people advising and making these statements, even the UNC accuse the UNC of making the statement that the Trinidad and Tobago dollar is overvalued. And how could you dispute that the Trinidad and Tobago dollar isn't overvalued when the black market is selling it at a particular price? It means that people are prepared to pay that price, right? Is a good indicator of what the real value of the Trinidad and Tobago dollar is. But you want to artificially hold it at 6 point, wherever it is, not deal with the supply side to make that a realistic price. You see, you're artificially holding it there without dealing with the imbalance. And there is a serious imbalance. The demand is there and the demand is growing, but the supply is dwindling. And he said he's going to defend this rate. In a very arrogant way. I am going to defend this rate. Yes, you have been defending this rate for the last 5 years. By doing what? By drawing down on the HSF, and you met 11 point something billion dollars in the HSF. It's now down to 5. More than half of it has disappeared. And you continue to borrow on the foreign exchange, on the foreign market, foreign loans, bring in those foreign loans, dump it in the foreign reserves to shore up the reserves, take the TT equivalent. So all they do is when the loans come in, it goes to the central bank would put it into foreign reserves and give them the TT equivalent. So the foreign reserves increase and you're showing up the foreign exchange reserves, that's SHORE, showing up the foreign exchange reserves by foreign borrowing, by drawing down on the HSF and other such means, and saying you're going to defend the exchange rate. But that's fine. But how long are you going to do that? How long is $5 billion in the HSF going to last us? How long? How much more can you borrow on the international market in foreign loans? Our credit rating right now is in junk status. And I haven't seen anybody in the in society, the economists and all the commentators, I haven't seen anybody take this government to task for having our international credit rating go down to junk bond status. There's a recent evaluation done by Moody's, and Moody's kept Trinidad and Tobago's rating in junk bond status, but they said there is the likelihood that it may improve in the next couple of years, and they were basing that statement on the government's convincing them that dragon gas was going to happen. So they gave a positive outlook. And the Minister of Finance, Mr. Colman Booth, jumped on that news that here, international credit rating agency Moody's have just given us a positive outlook on the credit rating. Why are you focusing on the outlook? What you should be focusing on is on what the rating is, and we are rated on the international rating system in junk bond status. What does that mean for us? It means that when you go to borrow on the international market, you are paying a higher price. In other words, whereas some countries with better credit rating can borrow at 2 and 3%, you are going to have to borrow at 8, 9, and 10%. They will lend you, but because you are risky, they'll charge you a higher interest rate. That's all it means. But commentators are not commenting on that and not making any statements on that. So for a time, they will continue.
We have educated people, but they don't have the stamina for some reason. And we're not
Well,
organized. If we had organized, we organized the sense, you know.
Right, but because this government has their hands in everything, people are afraid to criticize the governments because they'll lose contracts, they lose their jobs, they'll lose promotion, they lose all kinds of things. So people are timid to speak out. Right?
PNM Costa Nostra justice system, PNM Costa Nostra police and military, and you name it, and they got their tentacles and everything. So we have some uprooting to do when we take government. You know, we have some serious uprooting. You know,
boy, changes must happen, and if we are saying as a country we're not going in the right direction, if we're going to change it, we'll have to change captains, we'll have to change leadership at all levels, we have to change people where they're not, blocking and preventing government policy from being executed. You'll have to shift them around. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, we have to deal with those people that are in the in the various ministries. You know, the civil servant that will cause obstruction. You know, you have to deal with the guy down in the engine room in the ship. Yep. You know, the cook.
Yep.
I mean, you have to deal with. You have to get everybody on board. Is either they follow through with what we're trying to achieve. And then deal with it. Hands on. I want to welcome Nadira. I see Rudy, James, Bomati. I saw Riaz before. We want to welcome everyone. Mickey, welcome. Thank you guys for your support. Let us know if you want to jump into the conversation any day that we're on. The door is wide open for you guys to participate. So if there's something going in your community, we want to hear about it. Let us know if you have an idea, suggestion. We want to know about that too. So.
Yeah. So Gary, I think we've covered quite a lot tonight, and if you want to continue the conversation anytime, you let me know. But I think we've covered quite a lot tonight, enough for people to chew on and give serious consideration. So before I leave, again, I want to just re-emphasize the point, and I can't, even if I'm repeating it for the third or fourth time, I'm going to repeat it again.
Please do. It has to sink in. That has to sink in.
Yeah, I really want people to understand the importance of the vote that they have, and to take it seriously, because this is one opportunity we get every 5 years. And too many of us are too lax and lackadaisical about it. And we kind of look for excuses not to vote. And God forbid if rain falls on the 28th, the voter turnout is going to be low. If whatever frustrations happen and the EBC in their powers,
give up too easy, or people give up too easy.
Yes, and we have to stand up, even if we have to stand up in a line for 2 hours in the hot sun or in the rain, it is worth it. We can't continue to complain about the quality of our lives if we are not prepared to do something about it. And we get this opportunity once every 5 years, and let's take it and let's not look for the easy way out. Okay, so frustrations may happen on the 28th. People may try to frustrate the process, whatever, because I think the government, the PNM, knows very well that a low voter turnout is in their best interest. The minute there is going to be there is a voter turnout of over 60%, the PNM is in trouble, and they know that. So they will do whatever it takes through the help of their agents. And I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything that I don't have evidence for, but I'll just say they will do whatever it takes through their agents to try and frustrate some people. Let's stand up
But
against
also,
that.
yeah. We have to watch the, if there's any issue with your ID card, make sure you're on the list. These are the things we want to remind everyone. We need your help to get out the vote, to help, if you can help pay for somebody to get a taxi to the polling station, please do that. Anything that you can do, you can provide a bottle of water, I mean, a case of water, some food, any contribution you could make, please do so to make the process on voting day easy.
Yep. And be vigilant, be on guard, look out for unscrupulous behavior by some people who try to frustrate the process. Be on the lookout for those people and report them to the right sources immediately. Don't wait until election day or after election and say so and so happened and I saw so and so and so. No. Make
But you
it
didn't do
known
nothing.
on the election day when the authorities can deal with it. Bring it to the attention of party members, of people in the party. Lawyers would be all around the place ready to help. Okay, the UNC is going to have people at all constituencies at the various points, ready and willing to assist people who find themselves in difficulties. Okay, so don't give up easily. Take full advantage of your right to go and vote. Vote according to your conscience and do the right thing and secure a better future for all of us and the next generation. Gary, on that note, I have to say good night.
Thank you very much, brother. And I want to thank our listening audience for joining us. And tomorrow night, I'll be streaming that meeting in Salmon Barataria for that's taking place. I want to encourage everyone to look out for that. And please do whatever you can. Please start organizing yourself. We are last minute people. We like to do things very last minute. So
Yeah.
please try not to do that. Try to make sure who needs a ride, these kind of things, and make sure find out, ask questions. Don't sit by, see something, say something. Please do something. With
Yeah.
that, I will say
And
good night. Thank you everyone for listening and joining us here today, and we will continue to fight on this platform.
yeah. Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.